Philip was diagnosed with cancer and needed to shave his head for surgery. He was terrified. To encourage him, I cut off my long hair while crying. When I went to school with a shaved head, Philip laughed so hard he couldn't straighten up. "You silly girl, you really like me that much? Huh?" I felt confused and awkward under the teasing stares around me. It turned out Philip wasn't sick. He made a bet with someone. The bet was to see how far I would go for him. Someone asked Philip if he had feelings for me. He held a cigarette between his fingers and sneered. "Why would I like a freak who's cruel enough to hurt herself?" Later, I heard someone confess their feelings to me. Philip, looking dark and menacing, blocked my way. "You're not allowed to accept anyone else's love letter. Idiot. You're so easily fooled. Who else but me would treat you well?" Chapter 1. I was in a barber shop. As soon as the razor touched my scalp, I started crying. "Miss, are you sure you want to shave it all off?" the barber asked. I nodded firmly. "Cut it all." It was a promise between Philip and me. A few days ago, Philip was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he sent me the report. So annoying. "I don't plan on having surgery. I'll have to shave my head, it'll look awful." That wouldn't do. Surgery was the only treatment option, and the survival rate for early-stage tumors was quite high. I persuaded Philip for a long time. He reluctantly agreed. "All right, best friend. Will you shave your head with me? I don't want to be the only one everyone laughs at." I didn't think twice before agreeing. When the barber untied the cape, long black strands of hair scattered all over the floor. I touched my shiny bald head, feeling a bit lost, but I quickly gathered myself. I asked the barber to take a picture for me and sent it to Philip. "See? A shaved head isn't so bad after all. Besides, you're the most handsome guy at school. You'll look good even without hair." I racked my brain trying to come up with comforting words for him. My phone displayed, typing, but after a long time, Philip didn't respond. Passers-by gave me strange looks as I hurried home like a thief. Still, I felt relieved. At least I shaved my head along with Philip. Even if people laughed, I could share half the burden with him. Chapter 2. On Monday morning, I waited downstairs for Philip to go to school together. When he saw me, he froze for a moment. When I shyly lifted the corner of my hat, revealing my bald head, Philip averted his gaze uncomfortably. He shoved one hand in his pocket and scratched his eyelid with the other. In a low voice, he said, "Evelyn, I forgot to tell you. The brain tumor was a misdiagnosis. I don't need surgery anymore." Huh? It took me a while to process. Really? That's great. All the gloom of the past 2 days vanished. When we got to the classroom, I hadn't even put down my bag yet. The gym committee member yanked off my hat. My bald head was exposed to the air. He stared in shock, then clutched his stomach, laughing. "Oh my God, the village flower has turned into a bald-headed girl." And of course, our school heartthrob worked his magic again. I totally lost this one. "I'll give you my gaming account now." The gym committee member winked at Philip. Philip picked up my hat from the ground and carefully put it back on my head. He turned around and kicked the committee member. "Shut the hell up. Can't you keep your mouth shut for once?" It took me long enough to smooth things over. Philip turned to me, a playful smile spreading across his face. "Idiot. How are you so easy to fool?" I was surrounded by all sorts of curious stares in the classroom. It took my sluggish brain a long time to understand. Philip didn't have a brain tumor. He didn't need to shave his head or have surgery. It was all part of a bet he made with someone. A bet to see how much I'd sacrifice for him. And the wager was just a gaming account. "Philip." My voice trembled. Why did you lie to me?" I stubbornly blocked his path. My tears, as usual, started to gather in my eyes. "Oh, the bald-headed girl's gonna cry. Philip, you better comfort her." Someone teased. "Do you guys have a death wish?" Philip cursed with a smile, but when he looked back at me, the smile in his eyes was gone. He clicked his tongue in annoyance. "What? Are you trying to cling to me? Please. Was I the one who begged you to shave your head?" Chapter 3. Philip pushed me aside and went back to his seat. His face was dark, and no one dared to mess with him. The girl sitting in front of me, Diana, quietly turned her head and covered half her mouth with her hand. Evelyn, are you and Philip close? I answered sullenly. We were good friends before. Oh, I see. She dragged out her words and glanced at my hat. A shaved head is kind of cute. Your old braids were so outdated. You looked like you came straight from the countryside. I pressed my lips together and looked down at my textbook. I grew up in the mountains. After my grandma passed away, my parents brought me to the city. I still dressed the way I did back then. It made me feel safe, like I had never left my hometown, like my grandma was still with me. Philip knew this. He knew I was terrified of people getting sick, because my grandma died of brain cancer. It was terminal, and she couldn't have surgery. She died in agony. If I could make a wish, I would wish for cancer to disappear from the world so no one would suffer anymore. I didn't understand how Philip could be so cruel, turning something like that into a joke. The bell rang, and the homeroom teacher walked into the classroom. When he saw me with my hat on, his brow furrowed. Chapter 4. I stopped waiting for Philip to walk to and from school together. We fell into a cold war, ignoring each other. Then one day, rumors started spreading around school that I had a crush on Philip. Even in the bathroom, I could hear people talking about me, just because Philip said one word. Evelyn shaved her head like a fool. She's totally obsessed with him. That's not being obsessed. That's just pathetic. She has no self-respect. True. Everyone knows Elena's chasing after Philip, and Evelyn can't even compare to a single one of her fingers. I quietly walked back. Philip was leaning against a column in the hallway, his hand resting on a girl's waist. I recognized the girl. It was Elena, the school's top-ranked beauty on the forums. They both noticed me at the same time. Elena smiled sweetly. She shaved her head like a monk for you. And here you are hugging me so tightly. Aren't you afraid she'll be heartbroken enough to off herself? Philip smirked lazily. Should I go hug her instead? Philip, you're so annoying. Elena pouted. Swear you don't care about her at all. I didn't plan on sticking around to hear the rest. As I walked past, Philip's disgusted voice floated clearly into my ears. He said, "Who would like a freak cruel enough to hurt herself?" I slowly made my way back to the classroom. The flat cement floor felt like a swamp beneath my feet, with each step sinking deeper, pulling at my tears. My heart felt like it was covered in burrs, rolling painfully, unable to be soothed. I wished Grandma were still here. Before I turned 10, Philip and I had lived together in the mountains. Grandma would make 2 vegetable pancakes, one for me and one for Philip. I'd quickly finish mine in front of the stove. And seeing this, Philip would split his pancake in half and hand it to me. Grandma would smile kindly and say, "Philip takes such good care of his little sister." Philip, always serious, would say, "Evelyn is clumsy. I have to protect her and make sure she doesn't get hurt." The people in the village used to say that I stayed in my mom's womb too long and it damaged my brain. But Grandma would always tell me that I had the wisdom to play dumb. When I started elementary school, I was always at the bottom of the class in exams. I knew I really was slow, but Grandma would pat my head and smile lovingly. Not everyone in the world is meant to be a hero. It's just as great to be the one cheering for the hero. Evelyn, Grandma, I'm not a freak, and I won't be cheering for Philip anymore. Chapter 5. After school that night, I forgot my keycard and couldn't get into the community gate. Philip was walking behind me. The security guard asked if we lived in the same neighborhood. Philip glanced at me. I gripped the straps of my backpack tightly and stubbornly turned my head, refusing to look at him. Philip sneered. "No, I don't know her." With his sharp features and composed expression, his words seemed oddly convincing. Then he walked past me, calmly making his way into the neighborhood. It was freezing. Snowflakes landed on my eyelashes, sending chills through me. I waited outside until one of the aunties from the neighborhood came back from her walk and let me in. To my surprise, Philip was waiting by the entrance to the building. It seemed he had been there for a while, his hands red from the cold. He grabbed my hand as I went to unlock the door. His eyes were dark and heavy. "Evelyn, how long are you going to keep this up? Would it kill you to show a little weakness?" His grip hurt. I tried to pull away, but he only held on tighter. I spoke calmly. "Philip, I don't want to be your good friend anymore." He let out a low laugh. "Just because of that?" He pulled out a large black bag from behind him. A brand new wig. Consider it my apology. Isn't that sincere enough? I shook my head. Evelyn, don't be ungrateful. Philip stared at me with a half smile, half sneer. What? Did you shave your head hoping to become my girlfriend? Keep dreaming. He was so annoying. Why couldn't he understand what I was saying? I thought maybe my Mandarin wasn't clear enough, so I repeated myself. Philip, we're not friends anymore. His smile slowly froze over. You're serious? Yes. Fine. Whatever. Philip kicked the wig bag far away, his voice dripping with mocking laughter. Evelyn, you're so dumb. No one but me could ever put up with you. He turned and left. I stood there for a while, then threw the bag Philip left behind into the trash. Grandma Lee had a heart condition. If she saw a bag full of hair, she'd probably get a scare. Chapter 6. I finished making dinner and completed most of my homework. Finally, my parents came home. I served the hot dishes, and they washed their hands and sat down to eat, occasionally exchanging a few words about work at the dinner table. I couldn't find a way to join the conversation. Mom, there are a few problems I don't know how to solve. Can you? Mom glanced at my test paper and frowned. Didn't the teacher go over this material? Why don't you understand it? Were you daydreaming in class? Evelyn, your dad and I are discussing serious work issues. Don't interrupt. With a wave of her hand, the test paper was swept off the table, landing on the floor. It looked like it was about to rain. I picked up the test paper and went to close the window. Dad glanced at the calendar and said with surprise, Tomorrow's Evelyn's birthday. On the calendar, tomorrow's date was circled in bright red. I had marked it. Let's try to leave work early tomorrow. As my parents looked at me with warm smiles, I felt so happy I could jump into the sky and tell Grandma. Chapter 7. The classroom heater was turned up high. I took off my coat, revealing a pink sweater underneath. Pinned to my chest was a small bear brooch. Grandma had knitted it for me. The gym committee member exaggeratedly said, Wow, the bald girl is all pink today. I gotta admit, it's kind of cute. Philip, don't you think so? The boy who was called out looked up, giving me a cold glance. None of my business. Don't say that. Maybe she dressed up just for you. Philip flipped a page in his book, his face full of disgust. Diana's eyes gleamed. Elena wore pink today too. Are you trying to copy her? Evelyn? No. Today is my birthday. Grandma said you should wear bright colors on your birthday. The girls burst out laughing. Your birthday? Huh? That's a pretty lame excuse to grab attention. Before I realized it, someone had yanked off my hat and tossed it to the tall gym committee member. I stretched out my arm, but I couldn't reach it no matter how hard I tried. Amid the noisy laughter, I felt like a clown stripped of dignity. Wow, a pink egghead. I'm dying of laughter. Evelyn, hold still. Let me put a birthday crown on you. But you don't have hair, so we can't attach the clips. The girl laughed as she grabbed my arm, not giving me a chance to get my hat back. Many pairs of eyes stared at me. I held back the bitterness and, out of habit, glanced at the most familiar face. Philip, help me, please. Tears welled up in my eyes. Philip was watching me, raising his eyebrows. I read his lips, beg me. In that instant, all the strength drained from my body. I stopped struggling and slowly sat back in my seat, with my bald head exposed. I endured the whispers and mocking laughter for the rest of the class. After class, the homeroom teacher called me to the office. He stared at my head for a few seconds. I thought I was about to get scolded, but he just frowned and asked, Aren't you cold? I was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. A baseball cap was placed on my head. He kept a stern face. My son just bought it. He hasn't worn it yet. It's your birthday today, isn't it? You look quite spirited. He cleared his throat and exchanged a look with the female teacher beside him. The female teacher smiled and added, Pink looks great on young girls. Makes me wish I could be 18 again. The inside of the cap was lined with soft fleece, warm and cozy. I hesitated before asking, Could you not tell my parents? I was referring to the shaved head. The homeroom teacher was surprised. Your parents still don't know? No. It had already been half a month, but I wore a hat every day, and my parents were always busy with work. I could understand. Chapter 8. That night, I started coughing from the flour as I made 3 bowls of longevity noodles. The book said a child's birthday is the mother's day of hardship, so I had saved up my allowance for a long time and bought gifts for both my mom and dad. I skipped over to open the door. Suddenly, a slap landed on my face, catching me off guard. I fell to the ground, my elbow hitting the tile floor with a sharp, piercing pain. My hat fell off. When my mom saw my shaved head, she was furious. How dare you shave your head without a word? Are you trying to curse your father and me? I thought even though you were dumb, at least you were sensible. But it turns out you were just pretending, and we even ordered a cake for you. The cake was thrown hard onto the floor. The little girl on top shattered into pieces. All right, calm down, my dad said, holding my mom and comforting her in a low voice. His face was filled with disappointment. Evelyn, because you're not outstanding. Your mom and I can't hold our heads up in front of our colleagues. If you keep slacking off and lying, I'll consider sending you back to the countryside. My parents went back to their room. I sat there, dazed, staring at the floor. The cake had a huge hole in its middle, revealing the mango filling. It seemed my parents forgot that I'm allergic to mangoes. Plop, plop. Rain from outside mixed with my falling tears, smearing the chocolate girl's face. It looked just like me, ugly and pitiful. I picked up the broken cake and headed outside, where I saw Philip. He was standing at the stairwell corner, the light casting shadows over his face, splitting it into bright and dark halves. There were quite a few cigarette butts at his feet. It was clear he had watched everything. Philip, what? It was you who told my parents, wasn't it? I asked, my voice trembling. I believed my homeroom teacher wouldn't lie to me, and deep down, I wanted to believe Philip too. After all, he had been my best friend for 10 years. But when I saw his silence in that moment, all my trust crumbled. I took a step back, avoiding his outstretched hand. I cried as I ran out of the neighborhood. The broken cake still smelled sweet, attracting a dirty black cat. It looked like it hadn't eaten in a long time. I went to the pet store and bought a can of cat food. I thought about getting a small cake too, but after feeling my wallet, I gave up. Thank you for keeping me company on my birthday. I blew out the candle stuck in the can, and the cat happily devoured the food. I was so envious. I hadn't had dinner yet. A slender hand holding a small cake appeared under the umbrella. I looked up and saw a boy I didn't recognize. He scooped the cat into his arms. The cat struggled but gave up after he casted a calm glance. He smiled, his voice pleasant. Thank you for treating my cat to a snack. He squatted down and gently placed the cake on my lap. Here's a thank you gift. Before I could refuse, the boy added, Happy birthday, Evelyn. He pointed to my hat. Suddenly, I understood. You're the homeroom teacher's son, right? He smiled. A small dimple appeared on his cheek, making him look mischievous yet adorable. Evelyn, you're quite sharp. His straightforward compliment made me lower my head in embarrassment. The cake had a little brown bear drawn on it. It looked just like my brooch. Chapter 9. I learned the boy's name. Leonardo. He was a sports student from a neighboring school. Evelyn, I treated you to cake. Could you do me a favor? He pointed to his leg, his smile looking pitiful. I got hit by a car. Why didn't you say something earlier? I quickly helped him into a taxi. Once we arrived at the emergency room, Leonardo pushed me onto a bench before I could react. Please check her arm, he said to the doctor. The doctor rolled up my sleeve, gave my arm a couple of tugs, and the pain shocked me awake. Tears welled up in my eyes as I protested. Leonardo, weren't you the one who got hurt? Young lady, the doctor shook his head. Your arm is dislocated. How could you not notice? Leonardo handed me a tissue. Wipe your tears. He rolled up his pant leg, revealing a swollen, bloody knee, much worse than my injury. The doctor rolled his eyes. And you're the one with the bigger problem. Leonardo chuckled. I stood there with the tissue in my hand, feeling completely useless. Why wasn't Leonardo crying? The doctor called a nurse to apply the medicine, but instead of a nurse, it was Leonardo's mom who came in. She ignored Leonardo and gently applied the medicine to my arm. She smelled of a comforting, familiar fragrance. she scolded Leonardo. When the front desk said you were in the hospital, I thought you got into another fight. Mom. Leonardo cut her off. This is a hospital. No yelling. Where did you get the cat from? I raised it. After being interrupted several times, Mrs. Yi left in anger. Leonardo. Do you come to the hospital often? Leonardo glanced at me. His response vague. I had a disagreement with some classmates. So, they beat you up often? Leonardo hesitated, then lowered his eyes. Yeah, they hit pretty hard. I understood. It's painful to be rejected by those around you. Not knowing how to comfort him, I awkwardly complimented him. Leonardo, you and your mom are really alike. You're both very gentle and very good-looking. Leonardo's lips curved up. So you're saying my dad is ugly and harsh? I didn't mean that. Our homeroom teacher is really nice. It's okay. I won't tell my dad. He smiled mischievously, clearly teasing. I relaxed a little, loosening the tension in my shoulders. I felt a bit envious. Even though Mrs. Yi scolded Leonardo, her eyes were filled with obvious concern. It was exactly how I imagined a mother's love to be. Nervously, I opened my phone. My parents hadn't called me or sent a single message. When I got home late at night, I found a cake hanging on the doorknob. I ignored it. After closing the door, I heard a faint sound of another door opening behind me. Philip had just sent me a message. He said, Evelyn, I'm not that pathetic. I won't bother with you anymore. I sat there, stunned for a moment. Then I deleted Philip from my contacts. I opened my blog and posted the drawing I made today. Grandma always said, you have to stick with your hobbies. I've drawn every day for 10 years, and I've accumulated over 100,000 followers without realizing it. When my parents first brought me back home, I was so excited to share it with them, but all I got in return was, too much playing will ruin your future. Your grandma said you should take the art exam, but your mom and I decided that our family has no talent for the arts. Don't waste your time. But today, I received over 200 private messages wishing me a happy birthday. Someone out there really liked my art. Chapter 10. The clouds cleared after the rain, and the sky was radiant. New gossip spread around the school. Apparently, Philip had finally accepted Elena, the school goddess. Someone saw them kissing in the woods. The gym committee member led the teasing, asking Philip if it was true. I was silently memorizing my English essay when I felt a sharp gaze on me. Philip withdrew his gaze, smiling lazily. Yeah, I'll treat everyone to dinner tonight. A round of laughter and noise erupted again. Diana snatched my notebook. Evelyn, Philip's dating now. Are you heartbroken? Everyone chimed in. Yeah. The little egghead was all over Philip before. She's probably going to cry herself to sleep tonight. Philip, maybe you should do her a favor and take her as your second girlfriend? Philip leaned back, a disdainful smile on his face. Do you think I'm in the business of collecting trash? Amidst the mockery, I stood up. A boy panicked. Is she going to tell the teacher? No way. She's just a temporary student. If anyone causes trouble, she'll be the one kicked out. At 6th High, regular students, selective students, and temporary students had a clear hierarchy. I was a temporary student from the countryside, not under the direct supervision of the school's teachers. The homeroom teacher was kind. I didn't want to make things difficult for him over something small. I walked up to Philip. He tilted his chin up, a little smug. I looked him in the eye. The cake you gave me last night was garbage. Please make sure to pick it up. Philip froze. He didn't expect someone who had always been so submissive to embarrass him. The boys gathered around him, shocked and curious, asking why he sent me a cake. Humiliated, Philip's face darkened. He kicked over a desk and shot me a cold look before storming out of the classroom. Everyone else exchanged glances, too afraid to speak. Philip started flaunting his relationship with Elena all over school. Even when the school reprimanded them, he didn't care. At least no one associated me with him anymore. I finally had time to focus on drawing and studying. When I went downstairs to throw out the trash at night, I often saw Leonardo returning from his evening jog. He always seemed full of energy, wearing nothing but a short-sleeved shirt in the freezing weather. His sweat-soaked clothes clung to his skin, outlining his muscular abs, broad shoulders, a narrow waist without an ounce of excess fat. He was the most well-built guy I had ever seen. I pointed to the little black cat by his leg. Did he take the cat running with him? Leonardo scratched the cat under its chin. It's been sitting here for a while. Maybe it's waiting for you. Leonardo said I was the black cat's savior. It felt awkward. All I did was give it a can of food, to thank Leonardo for the hat he gave me. I drew him a picture. In the drawing, a tall, handsome boy held a black cat, his face soft with affection as he looked down. Leonardo stared at it for a long time. He gently rubbed the lower right corner, where I had signed my pen name out of habit. He smiled. "What's wrong?" I asked, confused. He opened his blog. His only follow was me. "Evelyn, look up," he said with a soft chuckle. I shook my head, embarrassed. It felt like being caught with a secret by someone I knew. Mortified, the black cat tugged at my pant leg, begging for attention. Leonardo's voice had a hint of subtle disappointment. "Are you ashamed that someone like me is your fan?" "No, it's not that." I picked up the mischievous cat, flustered, and looked up at him. "Leonardo, do you really like my drawings?" "I do." He spoke slowly, his drawn-out words carrying a kind of gentle warmth. "I've liked them for a long time." "Idol." He smiled, his eyes curving. "My basketball tournament is this weekend. Will you come cheer for me?" Hearing the word idol, I felt my face instantly heat up. But Leonardo's tone was so sincere. "Still, won't lots of your classmates cheer for you?" His gaze darkened, and even his eyelashes trembled. "I don't have a good relationship with them." That was too sad. I knew the feeling of being all alone. "Don't worry, I'll be there for sure." I patted my chest confidently. Leonardo's smile was gentle. My idol is the best." Chapter 11. The basketball game was held on Saturday morning. I was looking for Leonardo's team when Diana suddenly grabbed me. "How thick-skinned are you to still follow Philip here? Don't you know Elena is his official girlfriend now?" Her loud voice caught Philip's attention. He took the water bottle Elena handed him and glanced at me with cold indifference. Sneering, delusional. I squeezed into the crowd. Just when I was about to suffocate from the pressure, Leonardo pulled me into his arms. He was wearing a basketball uniform, his arms lean and strong, with muscles that didn't match his scholarly appearance. He looked like those characters in novels, sweet face, strong body. The contrast was almost overwhelming with hormones. "Here's some water," I offered. Leonardo didn't take it, smiling in a way that made my heart flutter. "Water from my idol? I need to win the game first before I'm worthy of drinking it." As he spoke, I felt a burning gaze fixed on me. Philip almost crushed the water bottle in his hand. Once the game resumed, the score was intense. The cheers for Leonardo completely drowned out those for Philip. Didn't he say he wasn't popular? During the halftime break, Leonardo rubbed his chin and guessed, "Maybe the school hired people to cheer for me?" In the second half, Leonardo played even harder, and even many of our school's students switched sides, excitedly shouting his name. On the court, Leonardo seemed like a different person, arrogant and dominant. At one point he effortlessly made Philip miss a block. With a crushing lead, Leonardo's team took first place. The crowd went wild with cheers. "Who is this guy? He's so cool." "You don't know Leonardo from 8th High? His mom's the director of a city hospital, and his family's loaded from Beijing. A lot of girls like him, but no one dares to confess. They say he's cold and sharp-tongued, and he never smiles." The snippets of gossip from the girls nearby drifted into my ears. I wondered if I'd heard wrong. Leonardo, cold? As I was puzzled, Leonardo tilted his head and looked at me. He smiled brightly, even a bit showily. "Evelyn, my prize." He extended his hand. He reminded me of a little black cat tugging at my pants, proud but cute. I hurriedly handed him the water bottle. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Philip's face darken. He stared at the bottle I had just given to Leonardo, his lips curling into a mocking sneer. "So, you've switched targets, huh? You really think the student who lost the game," Leonardo interrupted lazily, "should cut down on the salt?" Philip's face turned so dark it could drip water. After a pause, he sneered, "Evelyn, as a student of 6th High, Don't you think it's disgraceful to be cheering for someone from 8th high? I stopped Leonardo, who was about to explode. I glanced around at the others on the court. When you all mocked me, did you consider me your classmate? The gym committee member hung his head. Let it go, Philip. There are other people from outside the school here. Besides, you don't even like Evelyn, so why care who she cheers for? Philip's face grew even darker, his eyes cold as ice. But I wasn't afraid. We weren't friends anymore, so I didn't have to care about his feelings. I tugged on Leonardo's arm, reminding him it was time to collect his trophy. Leonardo turned around and casually walked backward. He smiled and motioned to me. There's a prize I think would be perfect for Little Black. It could be a great cat climbing frame. Want to come see it? Sure. Behind me, I vaguely heard Elena snapping at Philip in anger. Chapter 12. Leonardo had changed out of his basketball uniform and into a black hoodie, revealing a slender neck. He looked fresh and clean. He was the kind of guy who looked stunning at first glance and even better the more you looked. Diana came over. Evelyn, you sure are good with boys. A while ago, you were hanging around Philip, and now you're all buddy-buddy with Leonardo. She squatted next to Leonardo, her smile strange. Leonardo, did you know that Evelyn shaved her head for Philip? If you don't believe me, just take off her hat. She's still a little egghead. Leonardo frowned. I clenched the screw cap in my palm. Would he look down on me? It felt like an invisible hand was gripping my heart tightly. I painfully realized that I didn't seem to have the ability to hold on to friendships. Then a dry hand gently pried open my palm and took the screw cap from me. The marks from my nails were clear in my skin. Evelyn, you're not as mature as Little Black. Huh? I didn't understand. Leonardo sighed. Little Black only extends its claws to enemies. It doesn't hurt itself. Embarrassed, I hid my hands behind my back. The uneasiness in my heart completely vanished. I looked at Diana. Excuse me, could you move? You're in our way. Diana shot me a hateful glare, but seeing that Leonardo had no intention of helping her, she covered her face, which had turned as red as a liver, with an umbrella and quickly left. Leonardo gave me a thumbs up. I was still in a daze. That was the second time today I'd gotten into a conflict with someone, and both times were because of Leonardo. It felt strange, speaking up for myself, saying what I wanted to say. It didn't seem that hard. But still, Leonardo, do you know about my hair? I hesitated for 2 seconds, then took off my hat. My hair had grown a little over time. It was fluffy, like freshly sprouting chives, ugly and ridiculous, but Leonardo looked at it intently, without a trace of mockery, as if he were a dog eagerly waiting for a treat. Evelyn, can I touch it? I had no reason to refuse. Leonardo lowered the back of his hand and gently placed it on top of my head. He quickly pulled it back. Did you even touch it? Leonardo flashed a bright, toothy grin. I'm strong. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't believe him. His hands looked so clean and soft. How strong could they be? Leonardo spread out his fingers and chuckled. Want to see who's stronger? Skeptical. I gripped his hand, and we had my first ever arm wrestling match. I easily won. It was a bit awkward. Leonardo stared at his hand in a daze, his eyelashes trembling. His ears were flushed red from the sun. He must have felt defeated. I racked my brain for a way to comfort him. How about we try again? Maybe you weren't ready just now. Evelyn, you're so kind. We're friends. You can just call me by my name. Evelyn. All right, he said smoothly, taking my hand with a smile. Evelyn, let's go again. We arm wrestled over and over for the rest of the afternoon. Our palms were sweaty. Leonardo's ears were even redder. It dawned on me, my new friend had a very strong competitive streak. Chapter 13. That evening, I played with Little Black downstairs for a while. I thought about the egg tarts I had made and figured I could give some to Leonardo. As I went upstairs to get them, I ran into Philip. He seemed to be waiting for me by the door. His dark gaze fell on the egg tarts, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You really are something. Huh? Whoever you're friends with, you give them your whole heart. So stupid. In the past, whenever we argued and Philip called me dumb, I'd pretend it didn't bother me. But inside, I felt really hurt. But now, I took a moment to check my feelings. It was like throwing a rotten fruit into a vast ocean. It quickly disappeared, swallowed by the water. No waves, no ripples. My business is none of your concern. Philip's eyes burned with restrained anger. Evelyn, I'm warning you. If you go down there today, you're no longer my friend. I was baffled. Had he forgotten? We weren't friends anymore, to begin with. As the elevator doors closed, Philip slumped, his whole figure shrouded in a suffocating darkness. Thankfully, the egg tarts were still warm. When Leonardo took them, his fingers gently brushed mine. He noticed the red marks on my wrist, and his expression immediately darkened. What happened? I shook my head, not wanting to drag Leonardo into this mess. Philip was unstable and could hurt my friends. Wait here a second. Leonardo quickly ran out of the neighborhood, returning with a bag of medicine. Apply this twice a day, morning and night, okay? He rambled on about how to use the medication, beads of sweat forming on his forehead from running. Under the warm glow of the streetlight, the droplets glistened like tiny pearls. They fell onto my heart, making it skip a beat. Chapter 14. During the morning reading session, Leonardo suddenly appeared in the classroom. Our homeroom teacher frowned. Only one seat left. You can sit there. It was the seat closest to the trash can, a spot no one else wanted. Leonardo didn't mind at all. He casually threw his bag onto the desk. Looking up at me, his eyes curved into a smile. Someone asked why he transferred to our class. Leonardo twirled a pen lazily between his fingers. I heard you guys have a tradition of bullying temporary students, so I came to check it out. The gym committee member laughed awkwardly. That's just a rumor. Our class is super united. Philip, say something. Isn't that right? Before Philip could respond, Leonardo blinked innocently. Who's Philip? Is he the guy who freaked out after losing the basketball game? The classroom fell into dead silence. Everyone exchanged secretive glances toward Philip. The tension between the two was obvious to anyone. Thankfully, the bell rang, saving the situation. As soon as class ended, I pulled Leonardo outside. He followed reluctantly. Leonardo, why did you suddenly transfer to our class? He didn't answer, just smiled at me. A suspicion crossed my mind, but thinking about it made me feel a little too self-important. I quickly looked away. You should go back to your old school. The college entrance exams are coming up. I didn't want him to suffer Philip's wrath because of me. Leonardo leaned in closer, his face showing an innocent expression. My parents divorced years ago. Before the exams, I wanted to experience a bit of fatherly love at the school where my dad teaches. Evelyn, is that not allowed? So that's how it was. I was being too presumptuous. Of course that's allowed. It turned out our homeroom teacher and Mrs. Yi had divorced, and no one else in the school knew that Leonardo was the teacher's son. As we walked back to the classroom side by side, many people's gazes landed on us. Philip's was the most intense. It felt like he was trying to burn a hole through me with his stare. Leonardo stepped in front of me. He raised an eyebrow, half smiling. Philip really doesn't take losing well, does he? Do you think what you won was worth anything? Philip snapped back. Leonardo shrugged. Philip, you're really easy to provoke. I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. Philip clenched his fists, his expression dark and furious. Chapter 15. With Leonardo around, whenever anyone tried to mock me like before, he'd immediately snap back at them. He was like the king of sharp tongues, but when we walked Little Black at night, he'd be gentle and shy, blushing even when our hands brushed by accident. After some time, the school held its sports day. The gym committee member was busy recruiting participants. Leonardo, you're an athlete. Help us win a place, will you? Leonardo didn't even bother to lift his eyelids, treated like air. The gym committee member's smile froze for a second before he moved on as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, his registration form was snatched away. Leonardo's gaze was icy. Who gave you permission to write Evelyn's name down? The atmosphere around us froze. I hadn't signed up for anything. The gym committee member, looking guilty, glanced briefly at Philip. He righteously defended himself. Evelyn grew up in the mountains. Her stamina is better than other girls. She can definitely run the 5,000 meters. Leonardo chuckled lightly and tore the registration form. You look more suitable for the race. That's the girls' event. I can't participate. Leonardo sized him up, his tone nonchalant. Really? If you hadn't said anything, no one would have guessed you were a guy. The gym committee member's face turned a deep, blackish red, like braised pork, but he couldn't exactly drop his pants to prove he was a man. He was utterly humiliated by Leonardo. Philip stood up from his seat. Leonardo, who do you think you are to tell our class what to do? Leonardo raised an eyebrow slightly. Evelyn's my idol. Of course. I can't just stand by, unless the gym committee member is your idol. Philip? Is that why you're protecting him? The gym committee member, weighing over 200 pounds and dark-skinned, was always Philip's sidekick. Leonardo's words were clearly meant to insult Philip. Philip wasn't known for his patience, and he immediately threw a punch. Luckily, I had already run out to get the homeroom teacher. If you want to fight in my class, both of you can leave. The teacher scolded. The gym committee member complained bitterly. It's Leonardo. He's always looking down on us. Leonardo didn't flinch, lazily raising a middle finger. To be honest, aside from my idol, everyone here is trash. The whole class erupted in outrage, demanding justice from the teacher. The homeroom teacher glared at Leonardo. Then he repeated the same thing he had said when I was being bullied. The school rules are clear. Temporary students are not under our jurisdiction. Get along and stop causing trouble. The same words. But this time, no one had that smug look on their face. One by one, they lowered their heads like withered eggplants. While the teacher wasn't looking, Leonardo gave me a subtle thumbs up. I lowered my head. My eyes felt warm. After class, I went to the teacher and signed up for the 5,000-meter girls race. Leonardo, I'm sorry. I felt a bit guilty about how he had stood up for me in the classroom. The truth was, I really wanted to know what it felt like to participate in a race. Back in the mountains, there were few competitors, so I didn't really know how good I was. There's no need to apologize. Leonardo's eyes were serious. You should do what you want to do, but I don't want anyone forcing you. I smiled and nodded firmly. Chapter 16. Before the race. I was warming up by the edge of the field. Diana sneered maliciously. Evelyn, you better watch out during the race. If the wind blows your hat off, that'd be so embarrassing. Leonardo smirked coldly. The wind's strong enough to blow your face away. Realizing she'd been insulted, Diana stomped her foot in anger. The race was about to start. The stands were packed, and countless eyes were fixed on the track. I reached up and took off my hat. I handed it to Leonardo. Trust me. His eyes curved into a smile, shimmering with light. Good luck, idol. Wearing my spiky short hair drew a lot of strange looks, but I didn't care anymore. Giving your all for friendship is something to be proud of. Even though I later realized that the friendship was gone, my sincerity was real. What was disgusting was Philip. I shouldn't have blamed myself for his cruelty. I held my head high as I walked onto the track. The sound of the starting gun sent the circling geese flying into the sky. When I crossed the finish line, my legs buckled, and I nearly collapsed. A firm hand caught me around the waist. Take it slow. Walk a lap first before resting. The excitement inside me turned into hot tears in my eyes. I gripped his shirt tightly. Leonardo, I did it. I know. I always knew you would. Leonardo seemed tense, his face tight with concentration as he watched me closely for any signs of distress. Whispers from the crowd drifted to my ears. Who's that short-haired girl? She's so fast. Whoa, did you see the look in her eyes when she crossed the finish line? She's amazing, if I remember right. Isn't she the one with a crush on Philip? The school heartthrob? Please. She just won first place on her own. Who cares about some guy sitting on the grass? I drank water while several girls came over to compliment me. They even exchanged contact information and invited me to hang out. A bunch of guys also approached. Leonardo didn't seem happy about it. His eyes drooped with sadness. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing. He forced a smile. I might need to head back. Little Black's not feeling well. I'll go with you. Leonardo glanced at the guys still coming over to me and hesitated. I can go by myself. Really? Worst case, I'll just get scratched by Little Black again. I hurriedly pulled him to his feet. Let's go together. After urging him several more times, Leonardo finally gave in and walked with me toward the exit. We ran into Philip, who had just finished his sprint. It seemed like he called my name, but I didn't hear him clearly, because at that moment, Leonardo leaned over and asked, "Do you think Little Black doesn't like the cat climbing frame we made? Maybe we should get him some treats instead." I mulled over his question, completely missing the look of disappointment on Philip's face behind me. Chapter 17. The vet said Little Black might be feeling down. Do cats get bad moods too? Of course. The vet said firmly. The owner's mood can have a subtle influence on their pet. So Leonardo was feeling down? After trying various indirect and direct approaches, Leonardo, unable to resist any longer, blushed and admitted slowly, "Maybe it's because I've been thinking about the upcoming winter break and not being able to see you every day." I seriously considered a solution. "How about this? You could stay at your dad's place over New Year's." I felt like I was getting smarter, coming up with such a brilliant plan. Leonardo was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "You're right." He reached out and patted my head, sighing slightly. I guess the spiky hair must have pricked his hand, but he was too proud to admit it. Sigh. What a stubborn boy. Chapter 18. Back at the apartment. As the elevator doors opened, I was startled to see Philip standing there stiffly. Philip suddenly pressed my hand against the door, his other arm bracing against the wall, his chest pressed against my back, almost enveloping me. His voice was hoarse and heavy. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. Please forgive me, okay? Let's go back to how we were before, all right?" He lowered his head, his lips almost brushing my ear. I pushed him away forcefully. "No," I spoke coldly. "You're only apologizing to me now because I won the race today. You can't bully me anymore." "Philip, if I had lost today, would you still apologize?" I stared at him, my gaze becoming clearer. "You wouldn't. You'd mock me along with everyone else and continue using your childish and disgusting tactics to humiliate me, forcing me to bow down to you." Philip's body trembled slightly. His face turned pale. He let out a bitter laugh. "Is that how little you think of me?" I ignored him, turning away. Behind me, Philip's voice was low, as if explaining, or maybe mocking himself, the whole thing with the sign-up. That was Elena and Wang Wei's idea. I didn't know about it at first. Believe it or not, I never meant to actually hurt you. The sharp sound of the door closing cut off his words. Chapter 19. During winter break, my parents finally took a few days off for the new year. On the morning of the 29th, someone rang the doorbell. "Are you Buyo?" A man in his 40s, friendly and polite, called me by my blog name. I nodded with a smile. A while ago, someone from my blog had reached out, claiming to be the director of a children's hospital. He said my drawings had a therapeutic effect on children with autism and wanted to buy them and commission more. I verified his credentials, and they were real. I immediately rushed to my room to call my parents. After chatting for a while, my parents sent me downstairs to buy some noodles. When I returned, the director was already gone. "We still don't think it's reliable. If he really were a hospital director, would he be interested in your drawings? You're just a high schooler doodling. No one would want them, even if you gave them away for free. There's no such thing as a free lunch." "Evelyn, haven't I always taught you not to dream of instant success?" All the excitement and joy I had felt drained away in an instant. A sense of powerlessness washed over me. I rushed downstairs. The snow had already covered the footprints. I couldn't catch up. With trembling hands, I opened my blog, intending to contact the director again, but when I clicked on his profile, the account showed it had been deactivated. My parents admitted they had deleted the account. "Why are you crying? We're doing this for your own good. And now you're blaming us? Evelyn, we don't expect much from you. It's the new year, don't cause us trouble." When I lifted my head, the redness in my eyes only made them angrier. "If you want to go, just go yourself. You think you're so capable now. We won't stop you. We should never have let you live in the mountains for so long. Your grandma raised you too wild." I looked at them and smiled softly. "That's not true. Grandma always said I was the most well-behaved child in the village. But now, I didn't want to keep living like this. When Leonardo called to wish me a happy new year, I wanted to hide what had happened, but it seemed like he overheard the train station announcement in the background. His voice grew serious. "Evelyn, where are you?" I hesitated but eventually told him everything. Leonardo's voice was stern. "Evelyn, stay right there. Don't get on the train." I sat in the waiting hall, idly counting the specks on the floor tiles. Soon, a pair of shoes, covered in snow and mud, appeared in front of me. Leonardo's head was dusted with snowflakes, and his expression was cold. He pulled a scarf from his bag and silently wrapped it around my neck. Standing behind him were my homeroom teacher and Mrs. Yi. I was stunned. "I already spoke with your parents. I don't want to go back." I mumbled. "Who said you had to?" Mrs. Yi smiled. "We're going to Beijing together." I was even more confused. It wasn't until we were on the train that I learned Mrs. Yi had recommended my drawings to the hospital director. Who was her friend? I opened my mouth, my mind swirling. Mrs. Yi gently held my hand, apologetic. "I never told you, but I knew your grandmother a long time ago." Mrs. Yi told me a story. 14 years ago, she volunteered as a doctor in the mountains and spent a few years working there. When I was little, I showed signs of being different from other kids. I would sit on the ground, drawing with a stick for hours. My grandma, worried, sought out Dr. Yi for advice. Dr. Yi offered many suggestions, including encouraging me to open a blog, which later became a way for me to express myself through art. And Leonardo. According to Mrs. Yi, Leonardo had also lived in the mountains when he was younger. I had no memory of this. Mrs. Yi chuckled softly. "You were a shy kid. You didn't like playing with Leonardo. He even came home crying about it." I still couldn't remember. In my memory, I had always stuck to Philip when I was little. He was the city kid who already knew multiplication tables while the rest of us were playing in the mud. He always dressed so nicely, like a little angel from the TV. Unlike us, wrapped in dusty old clothes every day, everyone wanted to play with Philip. I was clumsy and slow, often left on the sidelines. I gave up and started stacking stones with the other kids left out. But Philip pushed the others away and took my hand, pulling me home. "Don't play with them, they'll just bully you." He spoke so seriously. "Evelyn, only I am your true friend." I knew I was slow, so I obediently nodded. "Only play with Philip, we're best friends." He impatiently corrected me. "No, I'm your only friend." Okay. From that day on, I had no other playmates. Had I really refused to play with Leonardo? I glanced at him cautiously. He still seemed upset that I hadn't told him I was leaving home. "Leonardo, what did you look like as a kid?" He ignored me. "Grandma used to say it's okay to act spoiled with people you're close to. They won't reject you." I wrapped my arms around Leonardo's stiff arm and gently swayed. "Leonardo, can you stop being mad? If I ever run away again, I'll tell you first, okay?" He finally turned to face me, his expression softening into an amused smile. "You're already planning another time?" For once, I was quick-witted and shook my head earnestly. "No more running away. You're not very gentle when you're mad." Mrs. Yi couldn't stop laughing. "Leonardo? Gentle? When has that ever happened?" I blinked, confused by her comment. "Leonardo's always been gentle, hasn't he?" "Evelyn, do you want some roasted chestnuts?" Leonardo suddenly interrupted, changing the topic. He peeled one and handed it to me, then continued peeling more, like he was feeding a hamster. "Is it good?" "It's delicious." "Leonardo, you're really kind." Mrs. Yi laughed again. In the middle of her laughter, Leonardo's cheeks turned a deep red. The homeroom teacher frowned, seemingly about to say something, but Mrs. Yi stomped on his foot, and he stayed quiet. There was a strange atmosphere. I couldn't figure it out, so I decided to forget about it and focus on eating my chestnuts. Chapter 20. The director bought 32 of my drawings, and the fee was 420,000 yuan. For me, that was already an astronomical sum. But Mrs. Yi frowned and said the director was underpaying a friend. After some negotiations, my bank account had 500,000 yuan. It was my first major earnings. Leonardo smiled and ruffled my hair. "My idol is amazing. I proudly accepted his compliment. Gone were the days when I felt timid and insecure after first moving to the city. On the way home, my bag had 2 extra red envelopes. They were New Year's gifts from Mrs. Yi and the homeroom teacher. When I got home, it was still cold and empty. When my parents heard that the director had really bought my drawings, they were shocked for a few seconds but quickly returned to their usual demeanor. They didn't apologize for deleting my blog, nor did they praise me like Mrs. Yi had. Later that night, when I got up to get some water, I overheard them talking in their room about whether I should repeat a year to prepare for the Art Academy exams. In their eyes, I wasn't a child. I was a machine, an outdated, clumsy one they resented. Yet they kept trying to input commands, forcing the machine to run according to their wishes. But I didn't want to accept this fate. After the mock exams, my score hovered between the first and second-tier university cutoffs. It was a huge improvement from before. I still wore my old, simple clothes. The only difference was that the person I walked to and from school with every day was now Leonardo. He seemed so worried that I'd run away again that he practically wanted to tie a rope around my wrist. In early April, Philip blocked me at the door. He had lost so much weight. He was practically a skeleton. I hadn't paid attention to him over the past few months, but I still heard rumors. He and Elena had broken up, and now, he was rumored to be involved with a girl from vocational school, causing the homeroom teacher to call his parents several times. His gaze was intense, full of obsession. As he stared at me, I never liked Elena. What if I told you, I've always liked you? Chapter 21. Philip closed his eyes in pain. He had always known he had special feelings for Evelyn. She was actually very pretty and incredibly sweet, giving him her whole heart. No matter how badly he treated her, she never seemed to get angry. Like a doll he could manipulate at will. Because of one lie he told, she foolishly cut her hair for him. How could he not be moved by someone so innocent? But Philip was scared. He was afraid he might actually give in and end up with Evelyn. So, he accepted Elena's confession, hoping to show Evelyn that he could never give her the emotional response she wanted. They could only ever be friends. Sometimes, he even hated her. He hated that she wasn't normal. She was always so slow. It took her 3 sentences to process what someone else could understand in one. Being with Evelyn meant dealing with the strange looks from others. He would be mocked, just like Evelyn was. His parents would never allow him to date someone they saw as foolish, and he didn't want to spend the rest of his life struggling like that. It was only much later that Philip understood. Evelyn wasn't the foolish one, he was. No one would ever offer him such a pure and sincere heart again. Smiling as they gave it to him. Chapter 22. I figured Philip must have been drunk. The things he was saying didn't make sense, and they were starting to get on my nerves. I don't care who you like. I don't like you anyway. After I said that, Philip laughed, calm and collected. That's impossible. You were so good to me. No matter how badly I treated you, you never got mad. And you even shaved your head for me. Isn't that love? So that's how he understood it. I shook my head in disbelief. Philip, I really don't like you. I treated you well because you were my friend, and because you were something my grandma left behind that I had to take care of. Philip thought he must have misheard. After my grandma passed away, I wanted to keep a few of her things as mementos. But my parents thought it was unlucky and burned everything. I remembered that my grandma had taken care of you too. So you became something she left behind. Like a keepsake. I sincerely explained. You're no different from my grandma's flashlight, her clothes rack, or her wash basin. Maybe my parents were right. Keeping old things brings bad luck. Like you, you're bad luck. By the time I finished speaking, Philip's face had gone beyond pale. He gritted his teeth. I don't believe you. Believe it or not. There was no need to argue. I turned to leave, but Philip grabbed me from behind, pulling me into his arms. You're in love with Leonardo, aren't you? Philip's expression was cold and vicious. Don't kid yourself. Once he finds out what a freak you are, do you really think he'll still be your friend? Evelyn, I'm the only one who can tolerate you. He lowered his head, trying to kiss me. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Philip's head snapped to the side, and a red handprint immediately appeared on his cheek. He touched his face and let out a low, mocking laugh. Feel better now? Are we even now? He was insane. I shook off his hand and hurried home. Philip's words had deeply shaken me. Fear crept in. What if Leonardo found out about the things I had done? Would he be scared? I didn't want to lose Leonardo. He meant far more to me than Philip ever did. Tossing and turning, unable to sleep, I carefully called Leonardo. He answered almost instantly. Evelyn, where are you? I could hear the sound of a cup hitting the ground on his end. Leonardo sounded so panicked. Was he afraid I had run away again? Suddenly, I wasn't worried anymore. Leonardo, we'll be best friends for life, right? There was a brief pause, and then he laughed softly, his voice gentle. Of course. When I hung up, I thought I heard him sigh quietly. Chapter 23. After the third mock exam, I had slipped down 2 spots in the rankings. The homeroom teacher reassured me, saying the test had been especially hard this time, so I shouldn't worry too much and just focus on my review. I pushed aside my disappointment and threw myself into my studies with renewed energy. Leonardo seemed to have found a new hobby, feeding me all kinds of snacks every day. He even secretly brought Little Black to school, while I worked on practice tests. My other hand could reach into my bag and pet the cat. It was the perfect stress reliever. Philip hadn't bothered me anymore, but whenever I spoke to Leonardo, I always felt a heavy, brooding gaze from behind. It continued until the last day before the exams. Philip came over to my desk and took off his hat. His hair was completely shaved off. He pursed his lips. Is this enough? The gym committee member was speechless with shock. Dude, what are you doing? Exam stress getting to you? It was as if Philip's pride had been shattered bit by bit, and now he was bowing his head. With a bitter smile, he said, I'm trying to win Evelyn back. You all get it now, right? He looked at me, his voice as firm as it had been when we were kids. I'll make up for every wrong I've done to you. From now on, no one will ever dare laugh at you again. Before I could respond, Leonardo suddenly shoved my desk partner aside and plopped down next to me. Resting his chin on his hand, he watched Philip with interest. TSK, TSK. He muttered, Is this the best your school's top guy can do? You should go buy a deck of cards. You'd find your ID and a photocopy of it in there. A flash of embarrassment crossed Philip's face, but he forced a smile. I'm talking to Evelyn. I gripped my pen and shook my head slightly. Philip, this isn't necessary. Evelyn, whether it's necessary or not isn't up to you to decide. He put his hat back on and returned to his seat. Leonardo, however, refused to leave. He stayed right next to me. When Philip approached earlier, I had noticed how tense Leonardo was. His hands had been gripping the desk tightly. Don't worry, I whispered into Leonardo's ear, trying to reassure him. We're the best. You and me. Leonardo's tight lips finally softened, and he smiled, but it didn't seem like a happy smile. Chapter 24. After the college entrance exams, I moved out of my parents' house. When they heard I was working part-time, they were quite pleased, even praising me for being sensible. But I didn't care about their opinions anymore. Leonardo, do you think we'll end up going to college in the same city? Of course. Will we still be best friends in college? I added quickly. I'm not saying you can't make other friends, but can we still be? We will. He didn't even hesitate. He reached out and tousled my short hair. If I say no, you're just going to hide under your blanket and cry at night, aren't you? I do not. Right. Leonardo smiled, his eyes twinkling. Without Evelyn, I'd be the one crying. I widened my eyes. I couldn't even imagine what Leonardo looked like when he cried. Philip never showed up again. I heard he did poorly on the exams and was forced to retake his senior year at another school by his parents. Leonardo and I ended up in the same city for college. He went to a sports academy, and I barely made it into a first-tier medical school, majoring in psychology. From freshman year to sophomore year, Leonardo came to see me every day without fail. Sometimes he brought me snacks or fruit. Other times he used the excuse that he was short on money to get a free meal at the cafeteria. He always had some reason, but he never let me visit him at the sports academy. When I asked him why, he mumbled, "It's all guys training there, sweaty and shirtless. You wouldn't like it." Leonardo was handsome. Even a simple coat looked like a custom-made designer piece on him. Whenever he showed up at my dorm, he always attracted the attention of many girls. My roommates would swoon. Evelyn, you're so lucky. A tall, handsome athlete, he's such a catch. My college roommates were friendly, and over the 2 years we'd spent together, we had gotten along well. I had explained many times that Leonardo and I were just friends, but they didn't believe me. I emphasized it again. My roommate Fong Yuan raised her hand. Evelyn, let me introduce you to an upperclassman. He's had a crush on you for a while but was too afraid to make a move because he thought you were taken. A crush? Could someone really have a crush on me? Fong Yuan rolled her eyes. Come on, you're the beauty of the psychology department. Have some confidence. They dragged me to the mirror. Over the past 2 years, Leonardo had fed me so much that I'd gained a few pounds. My once sharp chin now had a bit of softness, and I no longer looked like a scrawny kid. They pulled me over to try on clothes from my closet. Looking at the girl in the mirror with her long hair draped over her shoulders, I felt a strange mix of familiarity and unfamiliarity. One roommate clung to my arm. So, what do you think? Will you give it a shot? I nodded. All right. It seemed normal to have a college romance. I went to meet the upperclassman. As soon as he opened his mouth, I wanted to leave. The overwhelming smell of cigarettes was suffocating. Evelyn, I ordered your favorite taro milk tea with boba, less sugar and ice. He was enthusiastic. I forced myself to sit down. He asked me all sorts of questions, where I went to elementary, middle, and high school, what my parents did for work, whether I had siblings. When he found out I grew up in the mountains, he looked surprised, his gaze lingering on me. You have a great temperament. You don't look like you grew up in the mountains. He kept complimenting me, but I didn't feel happy, especially not with the way he looked at me. It made me uncomfortable, like I was being appraised as a product. Leonardo never looked at me like that. I started missing Leonardo. Leonardo, where are you? I texted him, but he didn't respond. After another 20 minutes of awkward conversation, I finally grabbed my phone. Sorry, we're not a good match. I'll pay you back for the milk tea. After transferring the money, I hurried out of the cafeteria. I ran right into Leonardo, dressed in all black. His expression was unreadable. I ran into your roommate at the gate. She said you were on a blind date. I nodded, just about to share the horrors of the experience with him. Leonardo grabbed my wrist, his voice low and hoarse. Why? Why a blind date? His grip wasn't tight, so I easily pulled away. Instead of letting go, Leonardo interlaced his fingers with mine. I didn't think much of it. As we walked, I complained. A lot of people in college date. I was curious about what it feels like to be in a relationship. Leonardo let out a quiet and asked calmly, "And? How does it feel?" His hand squeezed mine a little harder. I don't like it. I sighed. I think I'll be single forever. Leonardo laughed. The gloomy atmosphere around him seemed to lift instantly. He looked at me with a bright smile. Do you really want to be in a relationship? Well, not really. Then can you at least consider me first? I froze. I looked up and met Leonardo's deep, dark eyes. My heart raced like a scooter speeding down the highway. Leonardo. I stammered out his name awkwardly. He raised his hand and gently brushed my bangs aside. He leaned his forehead against mine, lightly rubbing it. His voice was unusually soft and alluring. Evelyn, I don't want to wait any longer. Will you date me? I stared at him, shocked, but I didn't feel the urge to resist. At such an important moment, all I could think about was the faint scent on him. Leonardo smelled good. I liked it. But, if we date, can we still be best friends? Leonardo blinked, surprised that this was my main concern. Of course. There was a lazy amusement in his voice, and the small dimples on his cheeks appeared. A boyfriend is still a friend too. Okay. Then, I reached out and hugged him. So, will we be boyfriend and girlfriend forever? Of course. He chuckled, resting his chin lightly on the top of my head. Suddenly, I felt something wet drip onto my neck. I glanced up, but the weather was perfectly clear. Leonardo, why are you crying? I tried to see, but he pressed my head back into his chest. So stingy. I tugged at his shirt in frustration, accidentally hitting some kind of nerve. Leonardo let out a sharp breath, and his whole body stiffened. I quietly withdrew my hand. Chapter 25. I told my roommates that I went on a blind date with the upperclassmen, but Leonardo ended up becoming my boyfriend instead. Their faces screamed, "I knew it! I told you!" Every time he looks at you, there's only one thing in his eyes: I love you. Evelyn. We all study psychology. You really didn't see that? I was good at my major, but I'd never applied it to those close to me. You should pay attention to his microexpressions and body language more. I bet you'll notice new things, my roommate suggested. I loved studying and analyzing. Leonardo walked me back to the dorm. I tilted my head, observing the slight downturn of his mouth. Leonardo, do you want to hug me? Before I even finished speaking, he pulled me into his arms. It seemed I was right. I became obsessed with analyzing Leonardo's various microexpressions. It felt like taking an exam with all the answers in hand. On the 100th day of our relationship, we were walking by the lake when he suddenly hooked his arm around mine and stopped, staring at my face. I instinctively leaned into his chest, giving him a tight hug. Just as I was about to pull away, he held me down. "That's not enough." His voice was hoarse, and he laughed. "Can you guess what I want to do?" He wanted to kiss me. "Is that okay?" he asked. I stayed silent. He cupped my face, lowering his head. The soft moonlight reflected in his eyes, filled with warmth. "Your silence means yes." With that, his lips came down. It was fierce and demanding, like a wolf cub trying to swallow me whole. Not gentle at all. I whimpered, and he finally, mercifully, stopped. We walked hand in hand down a quiet path. "Hey." Leonardo gave me that same look again. I knew he was setting me up, using my love of learning to trap me. I covered my mouth. "Not this time." He lowered his eyes in disappointment. "All right. Maybe next time. I can wait. No matter how long." He forced a smile, looking pitiful as he trudged ahead. I could tell he was faking it. "Leonardo." I tugged at his arm. "But this time, you have to be gentle." His eyelashes trembled as he bent down. "Okay." Just then, Little Black suddenly jumped out of my pocket. When he returned, tail wagging, begging for attention, I couldn't help but rub it. Leonardo turned away, his ears bright red. I didn't quite understand this new expression yet. It wasn't until much later that I learned what he meant was, "Stop playing with its tail, play with me instead." Here's the next section translated into English. Chapter 26. After graduation, Leonardo immediately dragged me into an engagement. My parents were the last to hear the news. They were furious, but there was nothing they could do. I was no longer the obedient robot they could control. I started working in the psychology department at a city hospital. The patients loved the paintings I had hung on the walls. One day, I ran into Philip at the hospital. He still had his shaved head, but he was so thin that I almost didn't recognize him. Poor guy. The attending doctor shook his head. "He's only in his 20s, but he's got a brain tumor. He doesn't have much time left." My mind went blank. Just like my grandmother, it was terminal cancer. No chance for surgery. The best the hospital could do was ease his suffering before he passed. As a new doctor, I was assigned to provide humanitarian psychological support for Philip. When he saw me, he wasn't surprised at all. He even smiled. "I knew you worked here. That's why I came." "Evelyn, would you say this is karma?" I tucked the blanket around him. After washing my hands with disinfectant, I finally spoke. "Don't think too much about it. Focus on getting better." Leonardo somehow heard that I was in Philip's ward and pushed off work, rushing over, out of breath. Philip looked at us and laughed until his throat went hoarse. He started coughing uncontrollably. Leonardo frowned and pressed the call button for the nurse. Then he took my hand and began to lead me out. "Leonardo, stop." Philip pushed the nurse away, his face contorted with anger. "You think you know how much you love Evelyn? Do you even know about her past? When she was 5, she went to the graveyard, dug up a dead dog, and brought it home. She kept it by her bed for a whole day and night. She's not normal. How could you possibly love someone like her? Hearing this piece of my past dragged out into the open, my whole body started to tremble. But Leonardo squeezed my hand in reassurance, glancing down at Philip with disdain. So what? I helped her dig it up. By your logic, I'm not normal either. Yep, we're both freaks. But you? You're just a dead man. Philip couldn't hold back and coughed up blood. Leonardo grimaced and pulled me out of the room. I knew I shouldn't have felt sorry for him. I was lost in thought. When I was a child, my grandmother's dog died, and I was heartbroken. At that age, I didn't understand the concept of death. I just wanted to bring the dog back. On the overgrown mountainside, I was too small to dig through the dirt. Then a little boy appeared behind me and silently helped me unearth the dog. Stop crying. Here you go. I carried the dog down the mountain, forgetting to ask for the boy's name or even what he looked like. As I grew older, I realized from others' comments that what I had done was considered disturbing by most people. Leonardo, was that little boy you? He nodded, raising his hand as if to pat my head but stopping himself. After washing and sanitizing his hands, he smiled and wiped away my tears. Leonardo's like a brick. Just pick me up whenever you need me. Over time, I came to understand so much more. The fleece-lined baseball cap had been placed in the teacher's office by Leonardo. Little Black was a stray cat. Leonardo had lied, saying it was his pet to help me let my guard down. It was Leonardo who had asked Mrs. Yi to contact the director to buy my paintings. And it was Leonardo, year after year, who came with me to visit my grandmother and her dog. Leonardo, if only I had known you earlier. He was holding Little Black, who had grown plump like a ball, smiling the same way he did the night he handed me that cake. That wouldn't have worked. Sweetheart, I'd have been too tempted to seduce you into dating early.